no doubt that Charlie's voice and the courage he put into the hearts of countless people, especially young people, will live on.
Conservative activist Charlie Kirk shot and killed at an event in Utah this week.
We don't have any time to waste as Democrats.
And we speak one-on-one with Wisconsin's latest candidate in the race for governor. And Madison former police chief wanted body cameras by 2027. But does the new chief think it could happen?
We now present For the Record.
Welcome to For the Record. I'm Ellie LaLiberte. We start this week with the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. This is the video that was taken just before Kirk was shot and killed at an event at a Utah university. The 31-year-old was largely credited with the rise of the conservative youth movement through his organization, Turning Point USA. But this is just the latest in a string of political violence we've seen. Last year, there were 2 attempts on President Trump's life, one at a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, and another in Florida. And in our state, this year, threats were made against Congressman Derek Van Orden, and an office of Glenn Grothman's was set on fire. Also this year, Minnesota State House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband were shot and killed in their home. And on Thursday, this memorial taking shape outside the Turning Point headquarters in Phoenix, Arizona for Kirk. I'm joined now by political analyst Brandon Scholes. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Nice to be here.
So we kind of got to get started. Can I just get your general reaction to what we saw on Wednesday with Kirk's assassination?
It's something that shocked everybody. No matter what political side you're on, if you're a supporter of Kirk and the right side versus the other side, when you see something like this, somebody just shot in cold blood, it's hard to react to. And what we've seen is that people are demonstrating anger. Some are talking about revenge. Some are just in complete shock about how could this happen in our country. This is something that, he's not a political figure. He's not elected. He's a bit of a celebrity because he's an advocate and he has a big history, but this really shocked people in a big way.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about who Kirk was. He's known for making some more controversial comments, saying things like, quote, "I have to think it's worth to unfortunately have the cost of some gun deaths every year so that we can have the Second Amendment," and saying that empathy is, quote, "a made-up New Age term that does a lot of damage." Can you kind of touch on his role in American politics?
Well, in American politics and in a democracy, we have the opportunity to talk about what we feel, our feelings, our positions, our issues. We have the opportunity to debate somebody who we don't agree with or they don't agree with us. But we have the right to say what we feel and how we feel. Charlie Kirk does, and the folks who are on the other side of Charlie Kirk. So his statements, people may not disagree. And some have taken it maybe to another level to react more violently. And that, I think, is the biggest problem, because we've now lost that ability to talk about where we stand. And even if it's a controversial issue, even if it's something that you just don't want to hear, you have the right, people have the right to say it. But this step of assassinating Charlie Kirk, or the attempts made on Trump, or all the other things at the legislature in Minnesota, this is not political discourse. These are acts of terrorism.
And it's something, do you feel like we've seen before, or is this kind of a turning point for us?
If you go back to the attempts on then Donald Trump and now President Trump, before that, we hadn't seen a lot. You go back to George Floyd, some other stuff. But the last really big assassination attempt was years ago on Congressman Steve Scalise, who is a member of Congress, a leader in the Republican side, at a softball game, a softball practice, because they have this game. And a guy, long gun, snuck up and shot Scalise, and it seriously wounded him. It took years for him to recover. And then it kind of died down. Now, if you take the political side of it, we've had school shootings and other attacks, but now you take all these combined, school shootings, political attacks, now it's somebody who's an advocate. This is broadening this violence. Some is political, some is just sheer lunacy.
And so, of course, Kirk also had a large impact on college students with Turning Point USA. We couldn't reach the UW-Madison chapter of that, but we did talk with the college Republicans of UW-Madison. Here's some reaction from some of those members.
I think that just his movement was always extremely important.
The problem here, it's not that the United States protects the Second Amendment. The problem is clearly political violence and demonization of conservatives on campuses just like this one.
So you can see there, I mean, people were had some high emotions Wednesday after this. So where do you see the conservative youth movement going? I mean, he had a really big hand in things like podcasts and going to college campuses. What's next for that movement?
What he had was the ability to message, to talk to people and to have that message resonate. There's so many people out there that have it, but he was able to hit that vein and get people going. I think the hope would be that they would take what Charlie Kirk did and what he established and what he built, grow on that and move it, and take that message through young conservatives, and they move on and they do it in, for him, in his legacy. The other side of it is somebody says, revenge, more violence. We're going to get the other side. That's a losing proposition. That's anti-democracy. If they take what Charlie Kirk did and move it forward, and they can grow their movement. It's been done many times before. Sadly, this is the opportunity to do that.
Is there anyone kind of who could come up in Kirk's space right now?
I think you have to be careful of somebody saying, I'm going to step into this, I'm going to take it over, because it could be too soon. I mean, there's a lot of, mourning, and people have to work this through. Whoever becomes the next leader, whether it's out of the Turning Point movement, or somebody that's been involved in a state that can rise. It's hard to say, but somebody will, once they get through all these kids in college and in this youth conservative movement, they're going to start to look for somebody, and somebody will step up into this movement.
And I kind of want to move now to some of the lawmaker reaction. Of course, after this, we saw an outpour of commentary. A lot of politicians, especially here in Wisconsin, condemning political acts of violence. From Senator Tammy Baldwin, she says, quote, "There is no two ways about this. Political violence has no place in America. I'm keeping Charlie and his family in my thoughts in this truly horrifying moment." Senator Ron Johnson tweeting, quote, "Please say a prayer for Charlie, his family, and his team." Representative Mark Pocan reacting, saying, quote, "Political violence is never acceptable. Gun violence is never acceptable. Never." Now, Governor Tony Evers also chiming in, saying he's hoping for more gun control.
Anybody that gets shot because of his beliefs, that's a bad day for America. And so certainly, prayers and hopes going out to the family and people that supported his issues, and we have to do better as a state, and we have to do better as a country.
So we see a lot of different kind of, or similar, I should say, responses from lawmakers here. What do you kind of make of those reactions?
Well, first of all, they need, and they're going to say that, because they have to be part of the effort that says, look, we just need to calm down here. This is wrong, and we have to move through with it. There's certainly going to be calls for gun control. That happens every time there's a shooting. But I think there's a deeper look into this, and that is, what causes it? How do you prevent it from happening? Is it a mere fact that somebody can get a gun? Quite honestly, anybody can get that rifle. That's not the issue here. The issue is, how can these folks come together after these first couple of days of reactions of where we're all shocked and trying to figure out how to deal with it? Then the next part comes like, where do we go with this? Are we going to see more violence, whether it be rhetoric or whether it's physical? Where are people going to settle down? Are the sides going to, part even more? Is there some sort of middle ground? And I guess what I would put out there is there an opportunity for somebody to lead? You talked about somebody coming and leading the movement of Turning Point. Are there people that can come out and lead right now when you have everybody just kind of out of their minds trying to deal with this? Is there somebody that can come in, or a group of people that can come in and just say, you know what? Let's just calm down a little bit here.
And I want to get your take, too, on some comments that Representative Derek Van Orden made in D.C. to the media. He pointed at a group of journalists during a press gaggle and said, "This is your fault," directly to the media. Now, there seems to be some pointing fingers here, because also on Wednesday, House Democrats and Republicans kind of clashed on the floor when a representative asked for a prayer for Kirk following a moment of silence. You were just talking about rhetoric. Does it seem to be a little bit more polarizing following this? Is that something we're seeing more and more of as these acts kind of spring up?
I don't think we know everything that caused this, but I do think that We've seen a lot more political rhetoric. We've seen a lot of hard things said. We've seen a lot of division in this country politically. And some of it's very passionate, some of it's very angry. This is probably what happened. That's probably part of it. I don't think this is the time to point fingers right now because we don't know. I mean, you can accuse anybody you want of being a part of what happened here. If Congressman Van Orden wants to blame the media, well, he can. But is this the right time to point the finger when you really don't know what caused this? Maybe now is not the time necessarily to point fingers, but it's the time to recognize that we're going to have to figure out how to do this. And there's all sorts of other things. I mean, security in events, outdoor events, access to somebody like Charlie Kirk who's just sitting there in a chair. There's so much more that has to come of this that has to be broken down and figure out what happened before you can get to the finger pointing stage.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Brandon. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Well, and next on For the Records, Democrats have a new candidate in the race for Wisconsin's next governor. We speak one-on-one with Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley. Welcome back to For the Record. Well, since Governor Tony Evers announced he will not be running for re-election, the pool to fill his seat is filling up. This week, a third Democrat entered the race. We speak one-on-one with Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley.
I'm running on this campaign to bring Democrats, independents, and Republicans into the fold because people are frustrated. They're frustrated with the state parties. They're frustrated with things not getting done, and they need us to help make things a little bit more affordable.
David Crowley has served as the Milwaukee County Executive for the past 5 years.
Balancing our budget, tackling the opioid epidemic, being able to bring affordable and attainable housing on board. These aren't Milwaukee issues. These aren't partisan issues. These are issues affecting everyone in our state.
The 39-year-old Democrat is the county's first black executive, and if elected, Crowley would be Wisconsin's first black governor.
I have the skills, I have the energy, I have the fire that's going to unify this base, bring new voices to the table, bring independence back to build a coalition to win winning races moving forward across our entire state.
His campaign centers on lowering costs for families, expanding affordable health care and housing, and fully funding public schools.
There are a lot of issues that are out there, but I think it's more important for us to go talk to the voters and focus on what their priorities are. And we're going to have a lot of time throughout this campaign to bring those issues to the forefront.
Crowley joins Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez and stadium vendor Ryan Sternad in the Democratic primary. But he says he's already thinking of the other side of the ticket.
My biggest fear is a Republican getting in control, and that's why I'm running in this race.
And Republicans Josh Schoeman, the Washington County executive, and Bill Berrien, a Milwaukee businessman, are already in the race.
They already have two candidates and possibly a third, which means that they're organizing, they're raising funds, they're uniting their base to make sure that they can win this governorship. And quite frankly, the stakes are too high. And so we don't have any time to waste as Democrats.
And in response to Crowley's candidacy, Berrien was quick to attack the Democratic Party, writing in a statement, quote, "Surprise, surprise, another career politician has jumped into the race of governor," confidently adding, quote, "It doesn't matter who the Democrats nominate, I plan to beat them." And U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin, also weighing in on the race, however, says she will not endorse a candidate in the primary.
I am watching a very talented primary field come together. But what's really important to me as I see these incredibly talented leaders step forward is that we continue Tony Evers' legacy of investing in public education, investing in our natural resources.
And now some other names that we are watching in this race are Madison Democratic State Senator Kelda Roys and U.S. Republican Representative Tom Tiffany. And next on For the Record, Madison has a new chief of police. I sit down with John Patterson to discuss everything from crime numbers to body cameras to the National Guard. That when we come back. Welcome back to For the Record. The Madison Police Department has a new chief after a roughly 6-month search. Newly appointed Chief John Patterson has been with the Madison Police Department for nearly 30 years and has previously served as an assistant police chief. I sat down for a one-on-one interview with Patterson to talk about the top issues for the department. And I want to bring up some of MPD's own data and kind of get your reaction and response to your plan for this. So according to a 2024 report, theft and assault were some of the highest offenses. Do you have plans to kind of look at those types of crime and address some of the higher things we're seeing in this area?
Our tracked crimes, including aggravated assaults and property crimes, are all trending down this year, which is great compared to last year. And I think it's reflective of our commitment to data-informed operation. But I think it is also causing us to look at the shift that we made in our investigative model. And so this year, we reorganized our detective resources and created essentially teams around certain crime categories, including person crimes and property crimes, to hopefully give a better service delivery in investigative follow-up to the entire community.
And so also to kind of just go off this data, again, back to 2024, we saw a disproportionate number of arrests when it comes to Black residents in Madison compared to white residents. How is the department looking to address that?
Analyzing racial disparities is something that has to be a priority for me. I think for far too long, it's been something that's persisted in our community. I think in the last, half a dozen or so years, maybe a little more, we've really made some great progress in reducing the number of arrests in total. So if you look at year-to-year trends, you'll see a decrease, but the disparities have persisted. So it hasn't really, those efforts have not affected the disparate numbers. So I think we need to continue to look at things like our restorative justice efforts and how are we diverting people away from the criminal justice system, both pre-arrest decisions and post-arrest decision efforts. But I think we also need to bring the community more to the table and do some active reflection, I guess, on our arrest decisions.
And now I kind of want to ask about body cameras here. So after a pilot program, your predecessor, Sean Barnes, wanted all officers to have body-worn cameras by 2027. Is that a priority, a goal of yours? Are you working towards that?
Body cameras will continue to be a priority. I think 2027 is probably overly optimistic, to be honest. It's a tremendous investment right now as the city is still coming off of the voter-approved referendum last year. We're still managing some of our budget challenges for next year. And so I don't think we'll see them immediately, but I'm going to continue to prioritize those as an acquisition in the future.
Is that something you're talking with the city about getting in the budget? Is there a timeline you could foresee for those cameras?
Well, that will be a large capital expense first, and then there's associated operating impacts as well as far as personnel, mainly in our records section to help us manage the files and respond to public records requests. I can tell you right now we're struggling a little bit with all things video, responding to all of the YouTubers and other folks that are requesting video right now. It's a lot, and so to think about dropping 492 body cameras and all the associated video that's going to be recorded every day on our records staff right now would be ill-advised, I think.
So no timeline quite yet.
No timeline quite yet. I hate to say that, but it's a priority, and I think we're going to continue to have the discussions.
Is there money shelled out in this in this budget for you guys to help maybe put aside for body cameras in the future?
Not specifically for body cameras, no.
And so moving to a little different topic here. So at the beginning of this year with the election, we saw a lot of protests in Madison, lots of crowds. How, as chief, do you plan to work to control crowds? Are there different tactics that you're wanting to take? Madison is a very active community. We also have Badger game days, lots of big events here and protests. What are things that you do to help crowd control and to mitigate any clash with officers?
No, that's a great question. I think we are a department that's committed to continuous improvement, and I think first and foremost we reflect on the lessons that we've learned. We learned a lot in 2020. Obviously, we had a lot of days responding to protests and to some really difficult circumstances. And we went through a growth period during that time. And at the end of it, per our Madison method, we reflected on it and we looked for lessons learned. We had the Quattrone Center come in and do a Sentinel event review for us. They gave us a number of recommendations to move forward. And so first we always reflect, and then, we rely on our Madison method. We reach out to organizers. We try to understand what their goals and objectives are. We're always committed, to protecting First Amendment rights and the rights of assembly. And we try to strike a good balance between the rights of those to express those rights of, free speech and assembly, but then the rights of everyone else around it to be safe and have a safe environment as well. So it's a tricky balance. Sometimes, our organizers are more communicative than other times. But so far this year, we've had a lot of success with those that have held events here in Madison. And I think the one back in June was a great example of that success. So.
And so kind of speaking of that, the federal government has been threatening or deploying the National Guard in cities across the state, across the states. That includes like Chicago and Milwaukee and discussions like that. Can I just kind of get your reaction as someone in law enforcement to that?
Well, it's definitely something that I think about a lot now, something that maybe I didn't think was possible a few months ago, but it caused us to reach out to the National Guard here locally and request a meeting with them just to start some tabletop planning. I mean, I think the last year has really emphasized to me the importance of developing relationships prior to an event. So we're trying to communicate with our National Guard partners early, and that's not signaling that anything's been suggested here locally. It's just so that we understand what their goals and objectives would be if something like that would happen here in Madison.
Wonderful. I think that's all I have for you today. I appreciate you sitting down and taking the time to talk with us.
Thank you for coming down. Appreciate it.
And when we come back, how our community is remembering 9/11. That's next on For the Record. Welcome back to For the Record. This week, we're remembering the tragedy of 9/11. Thursday marked 24 years since the deadly terror attacks that killed nearly 3,000 people and changed the nation forever. And right here in Wisconsin, members of Governor Tony Evers' administration came together to honor the lives lost on that day. The governor declared a state day of service and remembrance to honor those who died. And that's all for us this week. And a reminder, you can watch the full show episodes as well as expanded interviews on our website, channel3000.com. That's all for us this week. I'm Ellie LaLiberte. Have a great rest of your weekend. We'll see you right back here next Sunday.
This has been For the Record.